in the unforgiving landscape of the American frontier, where justice was often decided by the speed of a draw and mercy was as rare as water in the desert, some wounds cut deeper than any bullet ever could. This is the story of Emily Carter, a young woman whose innocence was stolen not by outlaws or strangers, but by the very blood that should have protected her, and of Jack Morrison, a cowboy whose gentle heart would prove that even in the harshest of lands, love could bloom where trust had withered and died. But before we ride into this tale of redemption and second chances, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell, because stories like these, of courage found in the darkest moments, deserve to be shared with every soul seeking hope in this wild world. The sun hung low over Redemption Creek, painting the dusty main street in shades of amber and gold. The small frontier town existed like so many others, a collection of weathered buildings, clinging to survival in the vast emptiness of the American West. The year was 1882, and civilization was still a fragile thing in these parts. Emily Carter moved through the dim interior of the frontier and like a ghost, her movements precise but distant. At 22, she possessed a beauty that should have drawn admirers from 3 counties over. Auburn hair that caught the lamplight like burnished copper, green eyes that once sparkled with life. But those who looked closely would see the shadows that lived behind those eyes, the way she flinched when men spoke too loudly, the careful distance she maintained from everyone around her. Emily, Table 6 needs their coffee refilled, called Martha Henderson, then's owner and the closest thing to a mother Emily had known since arriving in Redemption Creek 2 years prior. Martha was a woman of 50-odd years, withered by frontier life, but possessed of a kindness that had drawn Emily to her establishment when the young woman had arrived with nothing but the clothes on her back and pain in her heart. "Yes, ma'am," Emily replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She lifted the heavy coffee pot with practiced ease, though her hands trembled slightly, a tremor that never quite left her, a physical reminder of the night that had changed everything. Emily had been born Emily Whitmore, the daughter of a prosperous rancher in Colorado Territory. When her parents died in a typhoid outbreak in 1879, she had found herself alone with her father's brother, Uncle Marcus. Marcus Whitmore had always been different from his brother. Where Thomas had been honorable and kind, Marcus was calculating and cruel. The memory of that terrible night 18 months ago still haunted Emily's dreams. Marcus had been drinking heavily, and Emily had been in the kitchen, cleaning up after the evening meal. "You're becoming quite the woman, Emily," he had said, his words slurred but his intentions clear. "Your father's gone now. It's time you learned what it means to be grateful to the man who's kept a roof over your head." Emily shook her head, forcing the memory away as she poured coffee. She had learned to compartmentalize the horror of that night, to lock it away in a dark corner of her mind where it couldn't touch her daily existence. But the scars remained, in the way she couldn't bear to be touched, in the nightmares that still woke her in cold sweats, in the absolute certainty that she could never trust a man again. After that night, Emily had waited for her chance to escape. It came 3 weeks later, when Marcus rode out to check on the northern pastures. Emily had taken what little money she could find, saddled her horse, and ridden away from the only home she had ever known. She had changed her name from Whitmore to Carter and had eventually found her way to Redemption Creek. As she prepared for bed that night, Emily caught sight of herself in the small mirror above the washstand. The face that looked back at her was still young, but it carried the weight of experiences that had aged her beyond her years. She touched her cheek gently, remembering a time when she had looked forward to the future, when she had dreamed of marriage and children and a life filled with love and laughter. Those dreams felt like they belonged to someone else now. The morning sun was just beginning to paint the eastern sky when the sound of hoofbeats echoed down Redemption Creek's main street. Emily was already awake, preparing the inn for another day. Through the window, she watched as a lone rider approached, a tall, lean man dressed in the practical clothing of a working cowboy, sitting his magnificent bay stallion with easy confidence. As he dismounted and tied his horse to the hitching post, Emily found herself studying him more closely than she usually allowed herself to observe any man. There was something different about the stranger, a gentleness in the way he handled his horse, a quiet dignity in his movements. The stranger was perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair and a face weathered by sun and wind, but his eyes held a kindness that seemed at odds with the harsh world he inhabited. Martha emerged from the kitchen. "Looks like we got an early customer," she said, glancing out the window. The stranger stepped inside, removing his hat to reveal thick, dark hair. "Morning, ladies," he said, his voice deep and warm. "I'm hoping you might have a room available and maybe some breakfast. I've been writing since before dawn." "Of course," Martha replied. "I'm Martha Henderson, and this is the Frontier Inn." "I'm Jack Morrison," he said, smiling. "I'm much obliged for the hospitality." As Martha registered their new guest, Emily busied herself with setting tables, but found her attention repeatedly drawn to the quiet conversation. "You traveling through, or planning to stay?" Martha asked. "Actually, I'm looking for work. I heard there might be ranches in this area that could use an experienced hand." When Jack's gaze swept the common room and came to rest briefly on Emily, their eyes met across the space. For a moment, Emily felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 years, a flutter of awareness that had nothing to do with fear. But the feeling was so foreign that she immediately looked away, her heart racing. After Jack had gone upstairs, Martha turned to Emily with a speculative look. "Interesting man. Polite, well-spoken, and he's got kind eyes. The kind of man who'd treat a woman with respect." Emily's hands stilled on the silverware. "Mrs. Henderson, you know I'm not interested in men. In that way." "I know, child. But sometimes life surprises us. Sometimes healing comes from the most unexpected places." When Jack returned for breakfast, Emily approached with the coffee pot, her hands trembling slightly. "Breakfast will be ready shortly," she said softly. "Thank you, Miss Carter. Emily Carter." "Miss Carter." He said her name as if he were tasting it, finding it pleasant. "I'm grateful for your kindness." There was something in his tone that made Emily look up, and she found herself caught in his gaze. His eyes were brown, the color of rich earth after rain, and they held a gentleness that seemed to see straight through to her soul. For a moment, she felt exposed, vulnerable, but instead of the predatory interest she had learned to fear, she saw only compassion. As she turned to leave with his food order, his voice stopped her. "Miss Carter, I hope you don't mind my saying so, but you have the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen. They remind me of spring grass after a rain." Emily froze, her heart hammering, but there was no demand in Jack's words, no expectation. He had simply offered a kindness. "Thank you," she whispered, and fled to the safety of the kitchen. Behind her, she heard Martha's voice. "You'll have to forgive Emily, Mr. Morrison. She's a bit shy around strangers." "No forgiveness needed," Jack replied quietly. "Some people have good reason to be cautious. I respect that." For the first time in 2 years, Emily found herself wondering about a man's story. What had put that understanding in Jack Morrison's eyes? 3 weeks had passed since Jack Morrison's arrival, and his presence had become a familiar part of Emily's daily routine. He had found work at the Barty Ranch, but chose to keep his room at the inn. Emily suspected there was more to his decision than mere preference for solitude. She had noticed the way he watched her with gentle concern, as if he had appointed himself her silent guardian. On this particular morning, Emily was serving breakfast when she heard raised voices from the street outside. Through the window, she could see a group of men gathered around someone on horseback, someone whose voice carried the unmistakable tone of authority and menace. Emily's blood turned to ice as she recognized the voice. Marcus Whitmore had found her. Her uncle sat his horse in the middle of the street, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. Around him stood several of his ranch hands, men Emily remembered as being cut from the same cloth as their employer. "I'm looking for my niece," Marcus was saying. "Emily Whitmore. She ran off from my ranch over 2 years ago, and I've finally tracked her to this godforsaken town." Emily's legs nearly gave out beneath her. The coffee pot slipped from her nerveless fingers, shattering on the floor. The sound drew everyone's attention, including Jack, who had been quietly eating his breakfast. Suddenly, Jack was beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. "Emily, look at me." She turned toward him, her eyes wide with terror. "Who is that man?" he asked quietly. "My uncle," she whispered. "Marcus Whitmore. He's the reason I left home." Jack's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "What did he do to you, Emily?" The question hung in the air, and for a moment, Emily felt the overwhelming urge to tell him everything. But the words wouldn't come. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't tell you." "You don't have to," Jack said simply. "But I need you to know that whatever he did, you're safe now. I won't let him hurt you." Before Emily could respond, the inn's front door burst open and Marcus Whitmore strode inside. He was exactly as Emily remembered him, tall, broad-shouldered, with graying hair and cold blue eyes. His presence filled the room like a dark cloud. Marcus's gaze swept the room until it found Emily, and his face split into a smile that held no warmth. "There you are, my dear niece. You've led me quite a chase." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Emily said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "The lady said she's not going anywhere," Jack said quietly, stepping between Emily and her uncle. Marcus's attention shifted to Jack. "And you are?" "Jack Morrison, and you're not welcome here." Marcus's hand moved instinctively toward his gun, but Jack remained perfectly still. "This is a family matter, Morrison. It doesn't concern you. When a man threatens a woman under my protection, it becomes my concern," Jack replied evenly. Emily's heart skipped a beat at his words. Under his protection, Jack was publicly claiming responsibility for her safety. "Your protection." Marcus laughed harshly. "This girl is my niece, my blood. She belongs to me." "People don't belong to other people," Jack said, his voice carrying an edge of steel. "And Miss Carter has made it clear that she doesn't want to go with you." "No," Emily said, her voice stronger now. "I'm not. I'm never going back to that place." Marcus started forward, but Jack moved faster, stepping between them, his hand coming to rest on the butt of his gun. "I wouldn't," Jack said quietly. "Not if you want to walk out of here under your own power." Finally, Marcus stepped back. "This isn't finished, Morrison. That girl belongs to me, and I'll have her back." "If you come near her again, you'll answer to me," Jack replied. Marcus turned his attention back to Emily. "You can't hide behind him forever, Emily. Sooner or later, you'll be alone. And when that time comes, I'll be waiting." With that, he turned and strode from the inn. Through the window, Emily watched as he mounted his horse and rode away. But she knew this was only a temporary reprieve. "He'll be back," she whispered. "Let him come," Jack said simply. "When he does, I'll be ready." Emily turned to look at him. "Why? Why would you do this for me? You barely know me." Jack was quiet for a long moment. "Because everyone deserves to feel safe, Emily. Everyone deserves to have someone stand up for them. And because I've seen what happens when good people have no one to protect them." In that moment, Emily felt something shift inside her chest. A tiny crack in the wall she had built around her heart. For the first time in 2 years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe not all men were monsters. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack smiled. "You don't need to thank me, Emily. I'll be here as long as you need me to be." And for the first time since that terrible night, Emily began to believe that she might actually be safe. The weeks following Marcus's visit passed in a strange mixture of tension and unexpected peace. Jack had quietly made inquiries and learned that Marcus was staying at a hotel 30 miles away, apparently waiting for his opportunity. But Jack's steady presence provided a comfort Emily had never expected to feel again. It was during this time that Emily began to truly see Jack Morrison for who he was. She watched as he helped Martha repair a broken step without being asked, as he gently assisted elderly travelers, as he broke up fights with words rather than violence. More importantly, she began to notice the way he treated her, never pushing for conversation, never standing too close, never making her feel pressured. The breakthrough came on a quiet evening in late October. The dinner crowd had dispersed, and Emily was cleaning tables while Jack sat by the fireplace reading. The scene was so peaceful that Emily found herself studying him in the flickering firelight. "Jack," she said suddenly. He looked up immediately. "Yes. Why aren't you married?" The question tumbled out before she could stop it. "I was engaged once," Jack said gently. Her name was Sarah. She was killed in an Apache raid in 1878. I was supposed to be there that day, but I'd been delayed. By the time I arrived, he shook his head. There was nothing left to save. I'm so sorry, Emily whispered. For a long time, I blamed myself. It took me years to understand that some things are beyond our control. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. Is that why you're so determined to protect me? Partly, Jack admitted, but not entirely. Emily, what I feel for you, it's about the woman you are, the strength you've shown, the way you've survived something terrible and still managed to keep your kindness intact. Emily took a deep breath. Jack, I need to tell you something. About why I left my uncle's ranch. Only if you want to. Only if you're ready. He forced himself on me. My own uncle. He stole my innocence, my trust, my ability to believe that any man could be good. Jack's expression filled with gentle compassion. I'm sorry that happened to you, and I'm sorry you've had to carry that pain alone. Aren't you? Don't you think less of me? Jack moved closer, but stopped just outside her personal space. Emily, what happened to you was not your fault. It doesn't make you less than whole, and it certainly doesn't make me think less of you. Tears were flowing freely down Emily's cheeks now. I thought I'd never be able to trust a man again. And now? Jack asked gently. Now I think maybe I was wrong. Maybe some of them are like you. Jack's smile was radiant. Emily, I'll wait as long as it takes. Whether that's months or years or forever. I'll be here when you're ready, if you're ever ready. I think I'd like to try. To trust again. To see what might be possible between us. Are you sure? Instead of answering with words, Emily took a step toward him, then another. When she was close enough, she reached out and placed her hand on his chest. I'm sure, she said softly. The sound of horses approaching outside broke the spell. In the moonlight, they could see riders approaching. Too many for casual travelers. Marcus, Emily breathed. Go upstairs, Emily. Lock your door. I won't leave you to face him alone, Emily said firmly. I'm tired of running. The inn's front door burst open, and Marcus Whitmore strode inside with 4 of his men. He was clearly drunk, his face flushed and his movements unsteady. Time to go home, niece, Marcus said. She's not going anywhere, Jack said. Actually, he's not alone. The voice came from a stairway, and Emily turned to see Martha Henderson descending with a shotgun. Behind her came 3 of the inn's regular guests, all armed. This is my establishment, Martha said calmly, and I don't take kindly to men who threaten women under my roof. She's my niece, Marcus shouted. She belongs to me. No, Emily said, stepping out from behind Jack. I don't belong to you. I never did. What you did to me was wrong, and I won't let you hurt me again. Marcus lunged toward her, but Jack was faster. The confrontation was brief, but decisive. Jack's fist connected with Marcus's jaw, sending him sprawling. Before Marcus's men could react, they found themselves facing several weapons. I think it's time for you to leave, Jack said quietly. And if you ever come near Emily again, I'll make sure you regret it. Marcus struggled to his feet. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Emily said firmly. It's over because I'm not afraid of you anymore. I have people who care about me. You have no power over me now. Without another word, Marcus turned and stalked from the inn. Through the window, Emily watched as they rode away into the night. He won't be back, Jack said with certainty. Men like him are cowards at heart. Emily turned to face the people who had stood up for her. Thank you, all of you. This is what family does, Martha said gently. Family. The word resonated in Emily's heart. She had found a chosen family. People who cared about her not because they had to, but because they wanted to. As the others dispersed, Emily found herself alone with Jack once again. Jack, she said softly. Yes, earlier, when you said you'd wait as long as it takes. I don't think it's going to take as long as we thought. Jack's smile was gentle and full of promise. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Emily stepped closer to him. I'm saying that I'm ready to start healing. I'm ready to start living again. And I'd like to do both of those things with you. Jack reached up slowly and gently cupped her face in his hands. "Emily Carter, you are the strongest, most beautiful woman I've ever known. And I promise you, I will never give you reason to regret trusting me." "I know," Emily whispered. "That's why I love you." The words surprised them both, but as soon as they left her lips, Emily knew they were true. "I love you too, Emily. More than I ever thought possible." When he kissed her, it was with infinite gentleness, a promise of patience and devotion that would last a lifetime. And for the first time since that terrible night 2 years ago, Emily felt truly safe, truly loved, and truly free. 1 year later, the church bells of Redemption Creek rang out across the prairie. Emily Morrison stood at the window above the inn, watching as townspeople gathered for the celebration that would follow her wedding ceremony. She wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved and altered to fit. The white silk gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, and the delicate lace veil had been her mother's before her. "You look beautiful, child," Martha said from behind her. "Your parents would be so proud." Emily turned to smile at the woman who had become like a mother to her. "Thank you, Martha, for everything." A soft knock at the door interrupted them, and Jack's voice called out, "Are you ready, Mrs. Morrison?" Emily's heart skipped a beat at the sound of her new title. "I'm ready," she called back, and meant it with every fiber of her being. As they rode away from the church toward their new home on the small ranch Jack had purchased, he reached over and took her hand. "No regrets?" he asked softly. Emily looked at him, this man who had shown her that not all men were monsters, and smiled. "None," she said firmly. "Only gratitude." "For what?" "For you, for Martha, for second chances, for learning that sometimes the worst things that happen to us can lead to the best things, if we're brave enough to let them." Jack raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Here's to new beginnings, Mrs. Morrison. Here's to new beginnings, Mr. Morrison." And as their wagon rolled across the prairie toward their future, Emily knew that her story was just beginning. The frightened girl who had fled her uncle's ranch was gone, replaced by a woman who had learned that strength came not from avoiding pain, but from facing it with courage and the support of those who loved her. In the distance, the mountains rose against the endless sky, and Emily felt her heart lift with the promise of all the tomorrows yet to come. And there you have it, folks, a story of courage, healing, and the power of love to overcome even the darkest of pasts. If this tale of redemption in the Wild West touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more stories of hope and second chances from the American frontier. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon against darkness isn't a gun or a fist. It's the simple act of one human being choosing to stand up for another. Until next time, keep riding toward your own new beginnings.